Sitting of May 24th, 1904. Soon after the opening of this sitting, Rector introduced to me a personality purporting to be a physician, who held a long conversation with me in regard to my health. He told me that he formerly lived in Boston, that he was in Paris when he passed out, that he had been gone possibly a year or two. I afterwards ascertained that a physician by the name given, one with which I was not familiar, had lived on Beacon Street, Boston, and died in Paris early in the preceding September. This explains reference to the doctor in opening remarks below. The General.
Well, I wonder if there is anybody wishes to see me?
Hiram?
No, my name is Martin. I want to see Miss Robbins. Is she present?
Is this you, General?
It is. I am delighted to see you. That goes without saying. Well, how are you?
Oh, I am pretty well.
You look splendidly. I saw the doctor. I met him. As I came in, he was just going out. By the way, I want to give you a bit of advice. Whatever you do in that world, don't overdo. You know I was a great one to preach.
Well, no, I don't think you were.
Well, that makes me laugh. You know I don't think I did preach very much, but I am going to preach now. I am going to tell you to take care of yourself, and the Lord will take care of you. What are you doing?
Now, I want to take down every word that you say and what I say.
Well, you can do it. You are equal to it. I will try to be as slow as I can. Well, are you pretty well?
Yes, pretty well. I am going to be better.
You want to get some of these friends over here after you? I have been studying into this thing, studying the laws of our nature. That is, its problems on our side, and I am perfectly delighted with the conditions. I am perfectly delighted with the thought of returning. I seek you out and follow you night and day. I am often standing by your side when you don't realize it, and I stand there and laugh at myself to see how utterly unconcerned you are in regard to my presence. But, I say, but if her spiritual eyes could open, and she could see me as I am, I know she would be delighted. By the way, haven't you a sister?
Yes.
She has just passed through some sorrow in the earthly world?
Yes.
What has been her sorrow, her loss, has been somebody else's gain. Because she had, well, I think it is a husband?
I have a sister whose husband passed out in the early part of this year, only a few months previously. I have other sisters, but do not live with any of them. This particular sister had just been spending some months with me. My communicator had met her once or twice only in life, and was not at all well acquainted. I think I asked at this point if he was talking through Rector, my question not being recorded.
Oh, Rector is holding the light. I could not. They would not allow me to do that. Not quite now, but I may be able to later. But they have to support the light. Some friend has to look after it.
Do you want me to tell you a few things? Just the same as if you were here?
Just the same. How is Everett, by the way?
Everett is one of his sons, now living. Everett is well. I saw him a few days ago and took supper with him and his family.
I know it. I know about the children. You know there is a little one over here. We are very friendly with each other, and just as near to each other as we ever could be.
There is more talk about his son, and I ask, when do you think it would be well to send a message to him?
I think it would be perfectly safe to do it. Well, we will say in a few months.
Further talk on same line.
Don't you remember the talks we used to have together about this thing? And then I was a little skeptical. I could not seem to take it in. But I have taken it in to my satisfaction.
I relate to him a story of something that transpired during his last illness, of which he was entirely ignorant, something which involved a reference to a number of his old friends, most of them well-known public men. Do you think you would remember any of the names if I should mention them?
I think I should. Many names have gone from me, naturally, and new ones have come up to me. Names of places, names of people whom I knew in the mortal world, have gone from me to a certain extent. And as I go on, they go still farther from me, but I shall never forget you. I remember when I was suffering so. I remember the little councils we had together, and they have lasted in my memory and will to the end of all life.
General, it seems to be the real spiritual sympathies that you remember only.
Yes, well, those are the vital ones. Those are the real ones. And when you understand better the conditions of life and the conditions of passing from that life to this, the changes in the life as it were, you will understand more clearly what that means. But until then, it will be difficult for you to understand it fully. I have got to go out a moment. You will excuse me. I must go for a little change. My thoughts begin to wander, and if I stayed, you would be displeased with my wandering thoughts. So I will just go out and get refreshed and return instantly.
Silence for perhaps a minute, possibly not as long.
Are you still here?
Yes.
I feel better now. I want to know about the help to my family. What help have they now?
Some talk about family omitted. You remember that you thought you knew the name of the new baby, and you said it was Augustus. Well, it was not Augustus, but the mother told me that they called him Augustus nearly all the time.
Yes, that is what led me. What is his name?
It is William Everett. They call him Augustus when they speak about him.
I heard it so much, I felt sure it was his name. Now I want to know how you are getting on, and what you think about our writing that book.
Immediately reverts to family again. General, shall I tell you one or two more things before you speak of the book?
Yes, you might.
There was a man in the state's prison, you know. You used to see him sometimes with your old friend Chase.
Oh yes.
And when you passed away, he found it out, and got together $1 or $2 and gave it to someone, and asked him if he would buy a rose bush and put it on your grave. I wrote him a letter after that about it, and now he is out of prison, and he came to see me to thank me for the letter, and express his admiration and love for you.
That is very beautiful. Very beautiful. I am very glad to hear that. Who was he?
Oh, he was some old burglar or something, nobody that you cared anything about. I apologize today, 1909, to whom it may concern, for this thoughtless reply.
But had a heart?
Yes, had a heart. Now, do you remember how you used to lecture on Gettysburg?
Oh yes, I do. Yes, I do very well.
Well, after you went away, I got your speeches and put them together and made a nice, good, complete copy, as well as I could, and your wife has one of them and I have one. Did you know anything about it when I was doing it?
Well, yes, I knew the outline. But the work itself, the actual work as it was going on, I could not fathom. But I knew the work concerned my mortal life and things that transpired in it. But the nature of it, I could not define. We know generally what takes place in a general way, but if we were to define it, condense it, and give utterance to it, it would be difficult. But such is the law of this life. Remember now, if you could see me, you would say I was a mere film, and you would say how transparent and peculiar, and how light, and how strange you look to me. And you would say, where is your body? You look like a shadow, as it were. But still I could talk with you. We could converse with each other, and you would be surprised to see how real I am. The passing out is really beautiful. Just after you once get beyond the border, it is perfectly beautiful. You know the meaning of the word heaven? Well, it is heaven indeed. But the coming back is a little confusing at first, and we have to learn.
I think you are good to come back from such a place.
Well, I have attractions, and you seek for me, and I find you. Don't get nervous. Keep calm. We shall have time to say all there is to say.
Did you know anything about your funeral at the time?
Yes, I knew it, and saw the body, and saw the flowers. I saw the way in which it was laid out. I saw. Don't you think it looked well? I looked as though I was asleep. Don't you think so? and I don't think the face showed suffering. That is, the clay did not show the suffering, the body itself. But I felt, oh, I was so pleased to be out and away from the atmosphere. I felt so choked and so distressed for breath, and the moment I was released from the imprisoning body, then I could breathe perfectly. I could not describe it to you.
Well, you had a beautiful funeral, and a large one. And do you remember your old friend Horton, the minister? Reverend Edward A. Horton, who conducted the funeral service. They were familiar friends.
Yes, yes. Very well.
I wrote him and thanked him for all he said, and thanked him for you too. Was that right?
Beautiful. That is beautiful. What did he say?
Oh, he wrote me a very nice letter, and he said if I was satisfied, he thought it must have been satisfactory to others, because I was so close to you and knew you so well.
That is beautiful. I can only say to that, amen.
Only one or two remarks of a personal nature omitted here. Now I will let you say what you want to.
I want to say this, that when you are working, I sometimes dictate thoughts to you, and it is surprising to me to see how clearly you register them, and I think sometimes you are surprised to think that you have done what you have, and if you just stop and give me a thought, you would know why it was that you did those things, registered those thoughts. Sometimes there seems to be a barrier between you and your thoughts. They are not clear, and they seem to be a little obscure, and then they clear up marvelously. And you have always attributed that to the condition of your own brain. And now, if you just give me credit for a little bit of help, you would do the right thing. Not that I am egotistic, but the point is that I am really with you. And I want to say one thing, that you have not grown old in spirit, and not in the flesh. It looks so clear to me, so free, so bright, and so young, and I think your body looks the same. I can't see much change. Yes, I think you look about the same. I can't see the body so clearly as I can the spirit.
Do you know how old I am? A brief talk about age omitted. He thought me older than I then was. It was evidently the comparison of ages which carried him back to old associations, for he immediately followed it by saying,
You remember how we used to talk in the office there? Where is that office now? Is it there? Is the building gone away?
Referring, I presume, to the office of the Board of Police in Pemberton Square. Not that I know of. You mean where we were so long together?
They're going to remove it and put another in its place.
This matter was talked of as long ago as when he was there, and I think he had plans in his own mind for a new building. The particular building in which the old office was located has not yet, 1909, been replaced by a new one, although new large buildings have recently gone up close beside it. They had to get another lady there, couldn't get along without the ladies.
I know they did. That is very funny. Do you ever see anything of Hanscom?
Oh, why, yes, I don't see him often, but he has a good place there and is well and comfortable. I am so pleased that you should think of his name.
I could not help thinking about him. All of a sudden I thought of him, and I have seen him several times since I passed over. I have seen him discussing something there with another man in the office, and my mind reverted back to the office and the conditions, until I happened to think of him. He was not well at one time, but he is better now. That is, since I passed over.
Perhaps you like him better than you used to.
Because I see his principles.
I don't believe you quite understood him.
I didn't.
But I did. Better than you did.
Yes, but I did not understand what his active principles were. If you have an opportunity, I wish in an indirect way. If not direct, I wish you could mention me to him, will you? Tell him that you have met me.
Perhaps I might have him call on me, but I don't want to give too much of you away. You are too precious, but I think he would be pleased to hear what you have said about him.
Well, tell him that I appreciate all his efforts and everything that he did. A great deal better, perhaps now than ever. And I would like to have you tell him that for me. I don't want people to think that you are losing your mind, but I think you are far more capable of keeping your mind by finding me, perhaps, than others, than some of those who perhaps would not listen to it. So we will keep that a secret between ourselves.
You better leave that to my discretion. About seeing him.
I will.
Orrington M. Hanscom was formerly one of the higher officials in the police department. In 1888, after a protracted hearing on charges preferred against him and a decided disagreement among the members of the board in regard to the case, he was discharged from the force. I have memoranda in shorthand under date of December 1888, to the effect that Dr. Finuit, the early control of Mrs. Piper, predicted to me that Mr. Hanscom would sometime go back to his old position. In March 1889, the prediction was repeated that he would go back to his old position, or to his old surroundings. He was out of the department 6 years. In 1894, after General Martin became chairman of the board, his case was reopened and he was reinstated in the department, being appointed to a higher position than the one he formerly occupied, namely, that of deputy superintendent. There had formerly never been more than one deputy superintendent, but now 2 more men were given that ranking, Mr. Hanscom being one of them. The general, therefore, had shown himself very friendly to Mr. Hanscom, but when, after the reinstatement, they came to be actively associated, I think there was a feeling of disappointment on the part of the general in Mr. Hanscom. The latter was a man of rather broad outlook, with ideas of reform, which he liked to discuss, but his ideas did not always seem to be appreciated by his fellows or superiors. The general wanted his orders put into effect quickly, even though they might be difficult of execution. There was, therefore, this lack of harmony between the 2 men, which was perfectly apparent to me at the time. Therefore, the remarks of my communicator given above, to the effect that he did not understand his active principles, but that he appreciated all his efforts, now better than he ever did before, wishing to be remembered to Mr. Hanscom, are extremely pertinent. Some time after date of this sitting, I met Mr. Hanscom accidentally, and gave him the substance of the message, which he received with the courtesy habitual to him, refraining from criticism. Since then, he has himself passed away. Since the above was written, Mr. Hanscom has purported to return. This occurred at a sitting which took place on December 16, 1908. The communications were suddenly broken off, and I was told that a friend wanted to speak to me. I had no thought of anyone but Hiram Hart, who I presumed was interrupting for a word of greeting. Rector stumbled a little over the name, but only a little, calling it Hanson. Not till that moment did the thought of Hanscom enter my mind. I asked Rector to get the name exactly, and he spelled it out easily and correctly.
Hanscom, Orrin. Don't you remember Orrin?
It did not occur to me until after the sitting that the Christian name should have been Orrington and not Orrin. I do not know whether his intimate friends called him Orrin when in life or not, but it is quite likely they did. There was a very brief conversation. He said,
"What a happy ending to a blighted career."
Mrs. Piper, in her normal state, faintly recalled the name as that of someone whom she had heard spoken of, but said she did not know that he had passed to the other side. His death occurred in November 1907. In conversation about my private work, where it would be best to spend my vacation, etc., I say, "Greenacre, don't you remember? I used to go there."
I should approve of that at once and sanction it.
Reference to Greenacre will appear in a later sitting.
Do you remember a woman you used to talk to me about? In the body who used to have? The spirits used to speak through her?
Yes. This refers, of course, to Mrs. Piper.
Well, I want you some time to be in her surrounding when I am not speaking, and see if I can reach you, see if the thoughts will be clearer to you. I think it would be worthwhile to try it, because I often reach over the line when I don't speak.
Do you mean when the light is not working?
When the light is not working, when it is closed.
We were together a while ago in an evening, but then there were a good many people about.
I mean quietly. When there is nobody about except the spiritual intelligences, and when we are not actually acting upon it, and I think ideas would come to you very clearly.
I cannot say that any special experiment on my part was made in accordance with this request. Opportunities to be with Mrs. Piper alone, when not in trance, were rare with me.
I have got to go out to get my breath. I will be right back in a moment, but I have to refresh myself.
While the general is apparently out, Hiram Hart steps in, speaking hurriedly as if he had only a moment, and saying that he saw the other gentleman going out, so thought he would come in and say, "How do you do?" As he appears to be going, I say, "Oh, have you got to go?" He replies, "Oh, they have kept him so clear. I want him to learn what I know." The other gentleman then returns.
Well, I am right back here again. I met Mr. Hart, and he told me he just wanted to speak to you a moment while I was refreshing myself, so I said, go ahead and ask Rector if you can get in. Wasn't he a clergyman?
He was not here, but he says he is now.
Well, he is preaching and praying and helping all the people that come over this side, or the spirits. And he is a wonderful preacher, and he has done a great deal for me, and I am glad to know him because he was your friend. They say it is not all gold that glitters, but there is a great deal glitters here that is gold.
Well, he seems to admire you. He says you are very handsome. Laughing.
Well, I suppose he thinks so.
You used to be. Here.
Oh, you think so? There is no accounting for tastes, you know. But we have to accept those things. He is a good soul, and I like him. He has done, I say, a great deal for me, pointed out the way a great many times.
Now, General, I will let you say what you want to, but you were going to tell me something. What happened just after you went out, either on this side or on your side? Give me some new ideas, will you?
Yes, I will. You know, the actual passing out of the body, there is a little feeling of sort of depression, as it were. And then when I passed out, just as I passed out, I began to feel uplifted. I felt as though the air was filled with perfume, and I was soaring, rising above my body until I passed behind simply a veil. It is thin. It blinds your vision. It obstructs the vision for a moment from the earthly world. Then, after we have passed beyond it, why the music, the flowers, the trees, the birds, the lakes, the rivers, the hills, the gardens, the walks, are perfectly magnificent, and nothing in the earthly world hardly can even correspond to them. And we are taken up by perhaps a priest or man that acts in the capacity of what you would understand as a clergyman, and they say, this is a state of transition. You are now in the real life, in the new life. You will not see the face of the Father for many, many years, but he will give you strength and power to go back if you wish and see those whom you have left behind. And the feeling of ecstasy is beyond description, and no spirit that ever returned to earth could begin to describe it, for the understanding of the mortal mind. And then I was surrounded by friends, by acquaintances, by old war veterans, by my intimate friends whom I know, members of my family and all, surrounded by them, welcoming me. Why, I felt as though I should be enveloped by them. The delight was so great. But when I tried to call them by name, I was at a loss to do so. They had to tell me who they were. I knew their faces. Not one failed to me. I knew them and understood them well. I saw them and recognized them, but to call them by name, believe me, I could not. And when I tried to speak, I found, instead of it being an effort, and difficult for me to speak, I found that my thoughts were understood, actually understood, and their thoughts were returned to me. There was a perfect communion between us. And then I was taken. Would you believe it if I should tell you? I was taken to an actual mansion. It would be what you would call a palace. There is a garden, walks about it. It is divided into rooms, actual compartments. I was taken to that and they said, here's your home, occupy it, live in it, have what friends you choose with you, what relatives you choose with you, and as those whom you have left behind follow you, You may welcome them to this home as you may see fit. Do you understand it?
Yes.
I went in and looked about me. I said, "Where does this music come from?" I walked through a corridor and turned into a room at the right and actually walked without fatigue, without effort. I simply glided in. I saw beautiful pictures upon the walls. I saw beautiful flowers that we called in the body, palms growing about me. I heard this beautiful music. I stepped along to a window and looked out, and under the window there were 50 young, beautiful faces, all playing an orchestra. That was my welcome. That was my serenade, as it were. And they said, "This is heaven. This is the spiritual world. We greet you." I went to the window, and as I looked out upon the orchestra, they each one bowed and waved their hands. And yet the music continued. They were playing upon instruments, actual instruments, all in harmony, and I never heard anything like it in the earthly world. The music was divine. I said, I would like to go elsewhere. I bade them goodbye, as it were. I just saluted them and passed along across the corridor, back through the room, across the corridor, into the opposite side. I said, now I would like to see. If it is possible, I would like to see flowers about me. I went to the window, and would you believe, the flowers appeared to me in masses, en masse I might say. And I never saw such flowers. There were lilies, roses, violets, geraniums, carnations, azaleas, hyacinths, tulips, poppies, of every conceivable description, not all intermingled, but each one in its own place. What could you find? What could one wish for better than that? I said, now, if it is wise and right that I should seek it, I would like to hear something that sounds like the voice of a bird. They said, come this way. I was surrounded by these beautiful friends and by clergymen, a good many clergymen there, and they said some beautiful things. And they said, come to this window and see. But I said, may I not hear them here? I listened. In a moment, the air was filled with the music of the different birds. Well, you have no conception of what that melody was like. I saw the birds. The birds were just as distinct, much more so than your own. The flowers are real, and as I go back to the mortal life and see the crudeness of it and see how I lived, the active energy and the active life that I then led, the energy which I put into that life, I wonder that I ever existed in it at all. Now, you are not living in the real life. You are living in a dream, as it were. When you waken from the dream, you will live in the eternal life.
At this point, an account is given of his asking to know something about Christ, to know whether he had been deceived in the earthly world, in what he had been taught about Christ, and a description is given of a certain vision that was vouchsafed him. I have thought best to omit this whole passage, except to say that at its close he exclaims,
And I lived to tell you of it. I walked about, I felt. It was strange I had no hunger, no thirst, no desire to eat, no desire for food, but I am sustained by the conditions of the elements. The condition of the elements is such that we are fed and sustained and live by them. You can understand it. Perhaps vaguely, if not clearly. You have a wonderful power to understand, or used to have. I think perhaps you can picture me and picture my home and picture my surroundings. At least I make it as clear as I can for your understanding. Now, would you like to ask me any questions? Interrupt me if you wish to.
well, what do you do mostly with your time?
Well, now I will tell you. What would correspond with your morning? We have no morning. That is, it is all morning in a sense, in a way, there is no daylight and darkness with us. It is all daylight and what corresponds with your morning. I find that there are always entering into this life. There are spirits entering constantly from your life, and each one needs help, needs to be shown the way, and I enter the multitude, the throng outside of my own home. I pass through. I see the veil uplifted. I see a spirit passing, in perhaps millions of spirits. And I was told when I entered it that I must make this life here useful, by helping others and by reverencing God, offering up gratitude in a prayerful spirit to Him who created me and gave me the privilege of this life here. And I do that through the so-called day without fatigue, with perfect delight, assist someone's spirit or more who have left the body and entered this life. And until they are fully conscious and realize where they are, some are taken from us. We are not allowed to see them at all. They are taken into another sphere. Those are passed beyond us. We have nothing to do practically with them. But there are spirits that enter our own sphere, and we each lend a hand, show them their homes, settle them in it, go back and help another, and we are constantly doing that. And then I feel sometimes that I would like to help in something that corresponds with your writing. I find in my home everything for which I ask. If I wish pencil what corresponds with your pencil, I have it. If I wish to write my thoughts, I can write them. If I wish to speak them, I can do so. And every thought is granted. Every desire is granted. And if I wish to lecture, as I often do, I can do so without fatigue. And it is helpful to those who enter this life. If I wish to write, I can write. If I wish to walk, I can walk. If I wish to sing, I can sing. If I wish to speak, I can speak. That makes the life, as you would understand it, perfect. It is a perfect life. And, in order to live this perfect life, you have got to live in that imperfect life, and the more you undertake to prepare for this life, the less you have to go through when you pass it, and the clearer your thoughts become when you enter it. Have you got the idea? Would you like to ask me anything? There are instruments all about me. Everything you can think of: harps, violins, bugles, trumpets, horns, pianos, spinet. Do you remember what a spinet is? All those instruments.
They are just the same as our instruments, only better.
Only better. Everything is beautiful, and it is in a way, each article, object as well as spirit, is luminiferous. If the eye was open to the spiritual, and you could see me as I stand here talking with you, you could see every gesture I make, which is copied by Rector. He imitates me as I speak with you. You could see me and see my home. You could see everything that I have in it.
Then what do you do in the afternoon?
Then in the afternoon, sometimes I write a lecture. I go out and look at my flowers, enjoy them. I go and visit others. They visit me. I learn to play on the instruments, the different instruments. I am absorbed in music, and I love the flowers and the birds. Then I feel as though I would like to take up some intellectual pursuit. And then I begin. And I'm studying with those who have been here longer than myself, the actual conditions of this life, and what go to make up the life here. And as I learn, I give it out to others, interpret my knowledge to others. Therefore, our intellectual capacity is unlimited in a sense, and constantly being educated. And it is a beautiful idea, is it not? And then all through what you would call evening during the evening, what would correspond with your evening, there is chiefly music going on, entertainment and music. Then, after that passes, what corresponds with your early morning or late in the night, there are lectures and concerts of all kinds and descriptions going on, so that our lives are completely filled. And then during the later hours of the morning, before what would be your daylight, every single spirit on my side of the spirit life, where I am, is bowed in prayer for what would be at least 2 or 3 hours corresponding with your time. Perfect devotion and a prayer.
Then you don't have to sleep the way we do.
Have no sleep, no rest. What corresponds with your rest is activity on our part. And then, after the devotional exercises, we are ready for what would correspond with your day for our work again. Can you conceive of anything more beautiful or more perfect, or more to the liking of a man with my tastes and my ideas?
No.
But man should live his allotted time in the earthly world to prepare to live, and to live in this world. But, if he takes his life intentionally or otherwise, he remains in a sense like a little child here, or a germ, and he has to develop, unfold, bud, and flower, and he must necessarily do so. Ask me anything you wish. I am so glad to tell you this, because I want you to get some conception of what I am and what I am doing. This is not an idle, useless life here. Ah, no, not at all.
How long does it take for you to come to me? I meant at any time when I might think of him or call him, but I evidently did not make my meaning clear.
I would seem some distance from you if you could see me as I am. When you have a desire to speak with me, there are spirits here who know every mortal on the face of the earth. That is, the same one does not know, but the different ones know every mortal. And they say, "Here is a friend. I think she is a friend of yours." There the light is beginning to burn. It is open. We have attached the ethereal cord, and we will remove the spirit from the light. Take it to our world or out on the cord. Attach the cord to the shell, as it were. Fill it with our ethereal light, and you can enter into it and see if it is your friend. And if so, follow Rector. Follow those that are used to the cord and go to the end of it, and speak over it to Rector, who is actually within the shell himself, and he will transmit your messages to your friend. It takes in all, I suppose, of your time 5 or 10 minutes perhaps for me to reach you.
There is a brief talk about relationships, and I say, "You choose your own friends there as here, don't you?"
Just the same. It has been a perfect pleasure for me to see you again. Goodbye. God bless you. Come and see me again. May God watch over you.
Close.